get started. All right, thank you for joining us, everyone. My name is Stephanie Wells. I've been at MEFA for over 21 years. I've been working in higher education financing for over 27 years. So I've worked with, I said last night on a webinar that I've worked with hundreds of families, but I probably work with thousands of families at this point. And this time of year is really great. I enjoy this time of year working with them because they have financial aid offers in hand. We know where the students have gotten accepted to college, so we can really help them compare and contrast financial aid offers and help create a strategy to pay the bill. So this is a really exciting time for families. It can be a little bit stressful as well. And I'm sure it's stressful in the high school guidance offices as well, you know, working with students who may or may not have gotten into all the schools that they were hoping, and also are definitely having, you know, questions about how am I going to make the numbers work? How are we going to pay this bill? So this is sort of where the rubber meets the road. So I'm excited to have you all here. For those who are just logging in, we are recording today's session, and we'll share the recording as well as the slides with you. And today's session is worth 1 PDP point. We do have everybody on mute, and we've turned off the chat. So if you have questions, comments, or anything, please put those in the Q&A. That way I just have one place to look when I'm trying to answer your questions. And I will stop a couple times throughout if I see questions coming in, and we'll leave some time at the end for questions as well. So feel free to ask away. We have plenty of time to go through this information today, and I want to make sure we get everybody's questions answered. So for those of you who aren't familiar with MEFA, we are a nonprofit quasi-state authority located right here in Massachusetts. We've been around since 1982, so over 40 years doing lots of great work in the community. Many of you who have worked with us in the past know that we offer lots of great guidance for students and families throughout the whole college enrollment process, from the time they're little babies and they want to start saving for their kids to right now when they're about to send their kids to college. We have the whole gamut helpful, as well as for graduate school and refinancing loans. So we do a lot of work with families, but again, our mission really is providing that guidance and education. So when we've been doing these programs with families, we have been just really going through financial aid offers and understanding the different components. So I'll go through that with you today, but we also want to make sure that they understand there's lots of options to help pay the bill. We don't get too detailed into the specifics of loans and contrast and comparing loans at this point in the game, because families are still getting their financial aid offers and just trying to figure out, you know, strategy. And they really won't be applying for any loans until probably May or June, July, even August. July and August are peak months for loan applications. So we do have a couple webinars coming up in June and July on comparing loan options for families. So, but we do talk about loans, payment plans, and savings in this presentation. So feel free, if you have any questions, to type those in. If you do have loan questions, I'd be happy to answer those. But really at this time of year, what families need to be doing is understanding those financial aid offers, knowing how to go through the appeal process. We have an awesome webinar tonight on helping families through the appeal process. And we have some great presenters from colleges who will tell more about that. So even if you're, you know, it's not a specific webinar for school counselors, but you might really enjoy that. So feel free to sign up for that tonight. It's right on our website, and it's at 6:30 p.m. So we definitely want to make sure that families understand that they have options and really help them. We also do a lot of one-on-one appointments this time of year via Zoom. So when I get started talking to families about their financial aid offers, I want to give them a reminder about what financial aid is and what are the different components here. So understanding there's two different types of aid that they might see on a financial aid offer. They may see merit-based aid as well as need-based aid. Now we know that not every college offers merit-based aid, but most do. So you have your elite institutions like the Ivy League schools, for example. All their students are meritorious. They offer lots and lots of financial aid, but it's not merit-based. It's all 100% need-based. But those schools are few and far between. Most schools do give out some sort of merit-based aid. But most of the aid that is given out nationwide is based on financial need. So filling out those FAFSA and CSS profile forms to be considered for aid. So merit-based aid is going to be given based on the student's achievements or skills. Typically, most merit-based scholarships from colleges and universities are going to be based on the student's overall admissions application. So even if a student is a great athlete, but they're looking at maybe a Division II or Division III school, that may be considered as part of giving them a merit-based award, but it is not based on their athletic talents alone. It's based on the entire admissions application. Now the criteria for merit-based aid is going to differ from school to school. Even within one college, they may have different levels of merit-based aid for different students. So the higher a student's GPA score might qualify them for a higher scholarship amount. Now, merit-based awards do have criteria to keep that. And I do talk to families when I'm talking to them, moms and dads. I like to remind them that if the student has a merit-based scholarship, that's part of the student's contribution towards the bill. For most students in most situations, they're not going to be able to come up with 100% of what they need to pay the full bill. So they might need some help. And merit-based scholarships can help a lot depending on the amount. So that it is great if students can get that, but they do need to understand what their requirements are to keep that merit aid. So what is the GPA that they need? Do they need to stay in a certain major? If they do not meet that GPA, what happens next? Will the school take the scholarship away? Will they give them a semester to get their grades back up? Things like that. Those are the type of details that families need to understand if they're relying on a merit-based scholarship to help afford the institution that their student's going to attend. Now, need-based aid is really most of the aid that's given out nationwide is based on financial need. And it's standardized formulas for federal and state aid. Everybody gets treated equally. But it is important to know whether it's merit or need-based aid that most families are not going to get 100% of the aid that they may qualify for. So their financial need may be a certain amount, but most colleges, including the federal government and state government, don't have the budgets to honor and promise that 100% of a family's need will be met. Now, there are schools that do commit to giving 100% of their financial need. Schools like Northeastern, for example, is one. Boston College is thinking locally. Amherst College, schools like that. There are some nationwide that can commit to 100% of need, but most do not commit to that and can't do that because of budgets. But it doesn't mean that they won't give enough aid that the family can maybe help, come up with a plan to pay for that bill. But it's something very important to think about, the financial piece of this. So for those of you who are just joining, want to send a quick reminder to send questions through the Q&A. Everybody is on mute, and we are recording today's session for you as well, and we'll share the slides. So financial aid offers these days can come to a family in a variety of ways. It might be in paper form. It could be in an email to the student. It could be something that the student needs to log into the college's web portal and download that financial aid offer. Regardless of how the financial aid offer comes to the family, it still could look different from school to school. So we have just an example to go through some of the different components here. So the first thing that families will see on a financial aid offer, students and families, is going to be typically any grants or scholarships from the college or university. So they want that information to be right there on the top of that list so families understand what they're providing for the student. So here we can see ABC University grant for over $35,000, which is a nice scholarship or grant. Then we have, you can see on the offer, other scholarships and grants from the federal and state government. So those would be listed on an award as well, or an offer. So you see the Pell Grant, that's a pretty common grant that most folks are familiar with on there. Next, they may or may not see work study. So the federal and state grants are based on financial need, and work study is also based on financial need. So not every student is going to get work study at every college that they've applied to, but many will see this offer on a financial aid offer. So the work study program is a federal program where the student is able to apply for a job on campus through this program and earn a certain amount of dollars throughout the academic year. So in this example, the student can earn up to $1,500, and that can help pay for some of the unbilled expenses that are part of that cost of attendance, like books, transportation, supplies, things like that. And we do encourage students and families to look at the unbilled expenses, try to pay for those with work study money or a part-time job, maybe money that the student can save over the summer. So then when it does come time to pay the bill and to come up with the amount that they'll owe, they can just narrowly focus in on those billed expenses, especially if they need to borrow. They can borrow for billed expenses, but we want them to try and pay for that out of pocket just to keep that debt down. So then we would see on a financial aid offer, most colleges are going to package the full federal direct student loan for a freshman of $5,500. Now it could come in a variety of subsidized and or unsubsidized loan. So here you can see that this student qualified for the full subsidized loan for a freshman, which is $3,500. And then the rest is $2,000 in an unsubsidized loan. So the total a student can qualify for as a freshman is $5,500. Now I have a next slide. I'll tell you more about this loan in more detail, but the subsidized portion means that no interest is accruing on that loan while they're in school. So the subsidized portion is based on a family's financial need. And then the rest of it would be unsubsidized. For families who don't qualify for that subsidy, they may see a full $5,500 loan in the unsubsidized portion. And now not every college across the country is going to package an unsubsidized loan in a financial aid offer. Some colleges don't even package their loans. They want students to come to the financial aid office or give them a call and let them know that they want this loan because they're trying to keep debt levels down. So if a family doesn't see the full $5,500 on the package, but they do want that loan, they just have to contact the financial aid office. Now, when I talk about loans being on a financial aid offer, I'm really focused on the federal direct student loans, but some families may also see a federal plus loan, which is a parent loan for undergraduate students. And that is not financial aid. It is a federal loan that families may utilize to help pay the bill, but it's not the only option to pay the bill. And it may or may not even be the most cost-effective option to pay the bill. So we'll talk about that as well. Now, financial aid offers can look different from school to school. So I have a great college cost calculator. I'm going to demonstrate in a minute to show you how families can do that, to really be able to line up those financial aid offers side by side, without the glossy brochures and letters and all of that information, just to line up the numbers. Now, families, students do need to accept or decline all of a financial aid offer by May 1st, which is the national deadline. Some colleges may have an earlier deadline, so they just want to make sure that when they get that acceptance letter, they know what that deadline is. But for the most part, the national deadline is May 1st, and they can check the college's website. Now, why would a student not accept their full financial aid offer? Well, there could be a couple reasons. We always tell them, take all the free scholarships and grants. You definitely want to keep that. If the student doesn't want to work while they're in school, or they already have a part-time job and they can't accommodate a work study job, whatever it might be, maybe they're working a lot of hours in a different employment, then they may not accept the work study. But I always tell students, if you don't know what you're going to do in the fall, then just accept the work study. And then if you decide not to use it later, that's fine. And then the federal direct student loan, maybe a mom and dad have saved enough where the student doesn't need to borrow, so they may decline the federal direct student loan. Now, a little bit more about this federal direct student loan. Many of us on the line may refer to this or hear about it as the William D. Ford loan, the federal Stafford loan. The new name, or the current name, is federal direct student loan. So the student is the only borrower on this loan. They do not need a cosigner, which is great. It's a way for them to help contribute towards the bill, have a little bit of skin in the game. If students are really focused on their borrowing on just utilizing this loan, then that shouldn't be too crazy of amount of debt for them when they graduate, about $27,000, which is a lot of money. But we do hear stories about, families borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars or $100,000, and mom and dad then want the student to pay that back when they graduate from college, and that may not be feasible for an undergraduate student just getting out of college. So we talk about those things with the students and families, especially if the first question I have from a mom and dad when I'm chatting with them is often, what can the student take out in addition to this loan? And my answer is always, most of the time, they're not able to do anything else on their own in form of loans because they need a creditworthy cosigner. So the rate on this loan currently is 3.73% for this current academic year. The rate changes every July 1st, and we'll find out what the new rates for next year will be in May. Right now, one of the reasons why we tell families to utilize this loan before they do any other borrowing is because of some of the benefits. So right now we see students not being charged interest because of the pandemic. They're not even being required to make payments right now. There is word that the May 1st extension will be on making payments on these loans will be extended even further. So keep an ear out for that. And there is a fee that is deducted from this loan. So if a student borrowed $5,500, the amount that's credited towards the bill will be $5,500 minus that fee. And they do need to go through entrance counseling and sign a master promissory note once they decide on their school and make their deposit. The financial aid office will be in touch with the student on how to do that. And the entrance counseling is really a way for the federal government to make sure that students understand their rights and responsibilities as a federal student loan borrower. The other great thing about this loan is that they don't have to make payments while they're in school. They can make voluntary payments on the unsubsidized interest that's accruing, but they can defer this loan through grad school, military, Peace Corps. There's forgiveness options. There's public loan service forgiveness. So public service loan forgiveness. So there's definitely options out there for folks to, utilize if they need it when they get out of school. So some families may need to verify certain aspects of their financial aid applications. That's a process called verification, where the college is going to verify that data. They'll reach out to the family requesting information. It could be verification for their own institutional aid, or they could be doing it on behalf of the Department of Education, or a combination of both. Regardless of what the reason is, sometimes colleges do not know what the reason is that a Department of Education might want them to verify a student. They just have to relay the information to the family and collect that information. So it's important for families to understand that their financial aid offer is not finalized and won't be credited towards the bill until they comply with this request. Now, not every family is going to have to do verification, and they might not even have to do verification at every school that they've applied to, but they do need to comply with it and get that information in as soon as possible to the college. Could be business statements, tax return transcripts, things like that. We don't want them to, ignore this part and then get the bill and realize, oh, my aid hasn't been applied because they didn't go through this process. So it's important for them to keep an eye on the mail that's coming in the door. A lot of this, as you know, is sent directly to the student. So student needs to be reading their emails and logging into their web portal for any communications from the colleges. So if families haven't applied for aid, it's not too late to do so. They may or may not have missed the deadline for the college's institutional aid, but it's not too late to apply for aid through the federal and state government as well. The deadline for Massachusetts aid is May 1st. MEFA is working with all of our higher ed colleagues to offer a FAFSA festival on April 28th. So you'll get communication about that if you haven't already. Send students and families our way if they still need to file their FAFSA. We can help them with that. I believe it's April 28th, from 2 to 5 p.m., I believe. So it's important for them to still apply. We always recommend apply for aid. You never know what you're going to get. And even if it's just that federal direct student loan that they want to utilize, they still have to apply and fill out that FAFSA form. So the wait list, let's chat about the wait list, and feel free, folks, if you have questions, to type those in the Q&A, and I'll definitely stop as we go if we need to answer any questions. So the wait list is a way for schools to, take a list of students that qualify for admission at their school, but they just don't have enough slots for them. So they may put students on a wait list, and they may have a very long wait list where they take very few students off that wait list. If a student is holding out hope that they'll get accepted from the wait list, there's a few things that the family needs to consider. They may not get as much financial aid or maybe any financial aid from the college if they're being taken off the wait list. So they want to know from the college what type of financial aid can I expect if we do get accepted off a wait list. If the answer is 0, then they know what they're dealing with financial aid, and they can either move on or hold out for that school. But by May 1st, they do need to deposit at one of the schools a student was accepted to. Now, if they deposit at one school, get accepted off the wait list, let's say in June, decide to go to the waitlisted school, they will lose their deposit at the initial school they were accepted to. So once families have considered this and understand that, they may or may not get off the wait list and they may or may not receive much financial aid, then the student needs to take a few steps to formally accept their spot on the wait list. They want to continue to keep in touch with admissions. This is still the time to, put their best foot forward. That demonstrated interest in a school can really come in play during the waitlist process. Keep up with the school if there's any new grades or test scores or awards that can help boost that admissions application. Keep in touch through social media, things like that, and keep an eye on their email for any communications from the college. So talking about paying the balance due, it's a pretty simple formula to figure out the balance due, but it gets a little confusing when you look at all the different components. So basically, they're taking the charges from the college. Those are going to be the direct billed expenses, deducting the financial aid they received and the enrollment deposit, and whatever's left over, that's what they owe the school. So they may or may not, put work study in there towards the bill. They can also include unbilled expenses, but we have a great college cost calculator that can help with that. So let me just demonstrate that for you real quick. And I've had families take this information on the college cost calculator and create their own spreadsheet. I had a dad last Friday that I worked with, him and his wife. They have triplets. So he had been to one of these webinars. He created a spreadsheet with all of these line items direct to the penny for each student for all the schools that they were interested in. So I was really proud that he had done that, and it was helpful to really lay out the awards and the costs. So the first thing, I'll just demonstrate this real quick for you. First thing they'll want to do is put in the costs for the school, which hopefully came with the financial aid offer, or is easy. It should be easy to find on the school's website. So let's pretend we have a private college up here in the Northeast. We know they're pricey, so I'm going to put in $45,000 for tuition and fees. And then we have room and board. Let's say it's about $15,000. So there's our billed expenses. But they do want to prepare for and plan for the unbilled expenses. So books and supplies. The college will typically give them an estimate for that amount. I've seen anywhere on a college financial aid offer, it's usually in small print down below, to plan for these expenses. So they may say, $2,500 for books and supplies, and maybe there is transportation here as well. So maybe we can put in transportation. And maybe that's $1,000. Let's just estimate. Let's pretend they live in the Midwest and they're coming to school up here in the Northeast. They may also see a billed charge for health insurance. So here in Massachusetts, every student needs to be insured. So if they don't have insurance through their parents' plan, then they need to purchase the school's plan for the year. And it can run, good $2,000. So if the student is insured with the college, with the family's medical plan, then they can waive this health insurance cost. So I'm going to put in 0. And they do that waiver through the bursar's office. We'll usually send information with the bill on how to provide their insurance information to waive that fee. So if I scroll down, we can see everything's adding up automatically through the calculator. So if you were to put in this information for each school, you'll be able to see the total cost for each school. But then I think it's also helpful to see the line items. So what is each school charging in tuition and fees, for example? Then we want to put in all of our free money. So let's see here. My Pell Grant slot is covered up, so I'm just going to put in an SEOG grant. And then maybe we have a mass grant as well. And then maybe a grant from or scholarship from the college or university. I'm going to put in, let's say $40,000. So they're giving them $10,000 a year. Actually, let's increase that a little bit. Let's do $20,000 a year. So we'll put in 20,000. And then if they know of any outside private scholarships that the student may have received, they can put those in there as well. So from the college or university, or from the local boys club, whatever that might be, they can put that in here as well. And you can see down below, they'll be able to line up where they got the free money from each school. Then we put in our federal direct student loans. So we separate this out, even though it is financial aid. We want families to think about the loans different from the grants and scholarships. Put in my subsidized loan and my unsubsidized loan. Then if the family did get work study, they can put that in here as well, because we did include the unbilled expenses in this calculator. And then maybe the family has savings, a 529U fund, for example. They want to plan and use that as part of their strategy. Let's say they saved $20,000. They're going to use $5,000 a year towards the bill. So that's just one school. I'm not going to fill it in for every school, just so you can see how this works here. And then if I scroll down, everything is deducted. So that $63,500 cost of attendance might seem a little scary, big number, overwhelming, but we've more than chopped that bill in half just by applying our financial aid and savings. So this is a great tool to point students to if they need help there. Okay, and I'll answer some questions in a few minutes. I see a couple coming in there, so we'll definitely get to those. All right, let's see. So when they're comparing their results on the calculator or their own spreadsheet, it's good for them to look at that bottom line. What is the net price? And also to see in that award, how much are they looking at in loans? Because some colleges, as I mentioned, might put in a Federal Plus loan in there. So they want to, when I see families that have a plus loan and a financial aid offer, I tell them, cross that out, add that amount to the balance due, and then create a strategy to pay. Plus loans may be part of that equation. That might be a resource for them. But really, they can pay their bill however they see fit. So really looking at that financial fit. And also, even though it's an annual process, they might apply for loan each year. They want to be thinking ahead 4 years. So if they're borrowing, especially, what's that going to cost in a monthly payment if I borrow not just this year, but all 4 years? So families find themselves needing to borrow the first year, they're more than likely going to need to borrow for years 2, 3, and 4 as well. And if I'm talking to mom and dad who are really, dropping hints that they want the student to pay these loans off when they graduate, I always remind them that the student already has their federal direct student loans. They're paying that $300 a month when they graduate. So is it feasible for them to help mom and dad pay a MEFA loan off, for example? Will they be able to afford that based on the employment they're looking at or the career field that they're looking at going into? If they're going to be an engineer, it might not be a big deal. They'll have a good starting salary, most likely, but they might be going into a different career that has a lower starting salary, just as rewarding, but it might just not pay as much. So they really want to think about that before signing on the dotted line to borrow and making that commitment to a school. We really stress the affordability piece in limiting borrowing. Even though MEFA is a lender and we offer low-cost loans, we want them to limit borrowing. So the first thing towards that step is to look at savings. Do they have any savings? Has grandma or grandpa saved? Any aunts and uncles? Maybe they opened a 529 plan. Did they use the MEFA U fund or U plan? Maybe they have old savings bonds from the student's first communion or, first birthday, things like that. Bank accounts, things like that. Dig up all the money that might be available, things you might have forgotten you even set away, and figure out how you want to utilize that. So we tell them to contact their plan advisor if they have a 529 to think about and get professional advice on how they might utilize those funds. Give MEFA a call if they have a U plan and they want to know how much their U plan is worth at certain schools that they're accepted to. We can help them with that. So they definitely want to look at that savings and get some good guidance on how to utilize it. Then they want to look at current income in the form of, out-of-pocket expenses. How much can they afford out of their monthly budget to put towards college? So can they afford more than a minimum loan payment? If so, then let's look at maybe a payment plan, interest-free payment plan. Every college has one. And they can be paid out over 5 to 12 months. So it's not a loan, it's just a budget plan. It's usually a small enrollment fee. They do not have to fill out a FAFSA or have good credit to use a payment plan. So it's a great way to help minimize borrowing. And the college will send that information to the families with the bill, and they should have it on their website as well. So once families looked at savings and current income, still has a balance due, they might need to look at borrowing. And most families, in some way, shape, or form, do need to borrow for college. It is a big investment. It's a worthy investment. If they do need to borrow, it should pay off that investment in full and be a worthwhile, loan to take out as long as it's a reasonable amount. So beyond the federal direct student loan, there are ways that families can help pay the bill. I mentioned the PLUS loan earlier, which is a credit-based loan just for parents. Students are not on that loan. MEFA has great loan options where it's a family loan where students and parents or anybody who's creditworthy are on that loan. But the point is, above and beyond that federal direct student loan, it's going to be a credit-based program. So students who are 18, just getting out of high school, don't have established credit or might not be working full-time, probably not going to be able to get approved without a creditworthy cosigner. So that's really important to understand for families. It's also important for moms and dads who are cosigning. I talk to a lot of them, that they are equally responsible as the student for the payment of this loan. And the reason why I mention that is because I get the comments a lot, well, when they graduate, it's going to be all on them to pay. And I hear those exact words a lot. And I do have to remind moms and dads that they might not be able to afford to make these payments depending on, they go into graduate school full time. They might not be able to make payments right away, but maybe once they've done grad school and they have a good job, then they can help mom and dad make these payments. It really depends, but it's important for them to have the conversation with the student so everybody's on the same page about what mom and dad or mom and mom or dad and dad can afford. So they do want to look at that. And then we do have some comparing loan option webinars coming up in June and July for families where we'll go through disclosure statements, make sure they're understanding what is the fine print. When you see a lender who has a range of interest rates, has a really low starting rate, but a very high ending rate in the double digits, where are you going to fall in there? So things like that we can help guide families on. Now, MEFA also has a great calculator for this. So I'm going to just show this to you really, really quick. This is based on MEFA's loan programs, but whether or not a family is even looking at a MEFA loan, they can use this just to run some numbers and get estimates on amounts that they might need when they're looking at borrowing. So maybe they owe $35,000 at one school and $20,000 at another, and they want to run those two different scenarios to understand what their monthly payment will be and what the total cost of the loan will be, depending on where the student goes to school. So let's pretend that they owe $20,000 on our calculator here, and it's a freshman, so we have 4 years before graduation. So And then they want to put in their students, the borrower's credit profile, which would be the co-borrower. So I usually just use the middle one, very good, just for demonstration purposes. Hit calculate. And these are the 5 repayment options that MEFA offers that families can choose from. The interest rate they get is going to be based on their credit score and the repayment option they choose. So you can see we list out the monthly payments while they're in school, as well as when they graduate. If they start with immediate repayments while they're in school, the payments are going to be the same for either 10 or 15 years. But if they do interest only, they're going to pay interest payments while the student's in school. Then the payments will jump up when they graduate. So you can see if they defer, they're not making any payments while they're in school. But when they graduate, they have 11 years to pay that off to, utilize the deferred option. You can see the rates go up the further you push out repayment, as well as the total cost of attendance. And these are items that I highlight over and over when I'm showing families this calculator, so that they understand that what that $20,000 loan is going to cost through the MEFA program. They can run different scenarios. We might be in a conversation where they say, okay, well, let's say we're going to put 10,000 in cash. Let's rerun the numbers at 10,000 and we'll borrow 10,000 on a loan. So they can do that. So it's easy to have those conversations about this with the monthly payment calculator through MEFA. So just to wrap up this section, then we'll go through a few more things. I'll answer some questions here. A pathway to pay the college bill usually is going to be some sort of combination strategy. So families can, look at that 20,000 balance and say, I'm going to borrow it all, about $200 a month for a $20,000 loan. So my first question will be, well, can you afford more than that minimum loan payment? If so, let's try to use some of that out-of-pocket money to put towards a payment plan. Utilize those savings. So in this example, student has worked over the summer. They've saved a little bit, parents saved a little bit, maybe in a 529. So we've chipped off $5,000 off that $20,000 balance. Then mom and dad are, doing a payment plan at $500 a month on a $5,000 10-month plan. So with utilizing savings and current income, they've chopped their bill in half, and they still need to borrow, but it's half of what they owe, not borrowing the full 20,000. So this family has said, I can afford $600 a month. So it's $500 a month on the payment plan and $100 a month on the $10,000 loan. And here's another example for a family who might have a smaller balance due, combination strategy. Depending on what they owe, the numbers could be very different from family to family and school to school. So let's talk about timing. And I want to make sure that we are, I'm keeping an eye on the clock so that we can have time for questions. So the fall semester bill is going to be sent in June or July, and will be due about 3 to 5 weeks later in July or August. We tell families, apply for your loan, your MEFA loan, a good 2 weeks before the bill is due, just so they have time in case there's something crazy that pops up on their credit report, for example. Sometimes families put a freeze on their credits when they apply for a loan. It's frozen and they have to release that freeze on their credit report before they can be submitted for qualification. So that could delay things a few days. So things like that, funky things can happen. You just never know. So we say, don't stress yourself out by waiting till the day before the bill is due. Give yourself a little wiggle room. But of course, we do talk to families who are applying for loans in late August, well after the bill is due. So, but we do try to guide them to start early and set up those payment plans based on the school schedule. So this is also a time of year where families and students are saying, well, where can I get more scholarships? How do I apply for more scholarships? They're wanting to access those free dollars. And the first thing we're telling folks, this time of year, it might be a little late to submit an application for scholarships through the guidance office, depending on what your deadline was. So we tell them to check with your guidance office first for local scholarships. That's going to be their best opportunity because there's less students applying, there's less competition because it is local through your town or high school. And they're more likely to get maybe a smaller scholarship than maybe the Gates scholarship, but at least it's something to help pay for those bills, to help pay for some books or, a fridge for the first year as a freshman. Never should they pay anybody to do a scholarship search or apply for scholarships. It may or may not be a scam. All of these search engines that we're showing are free. So we don't want families to pay anybody to apply for financial aid or to apply for scholarships. Now, once they've looked at local community, they also want to think about, well, what about my employer? What about, the religious organization that we're a part of, our church, or, the Knights of Columbus, or maybe the student played Pop Warner football, things like that. Those are all the little nooks and crannies that they want to think about and see what might be available for their family. Then they can look at those online search engines. So MEFA Pathway has a great scholarship search. College Board, FastWeb, Going Merry, those are all great tools as well. And we also are always, putting information out on social media about scholarship alerts. There are ways for students to, go to school at a much lower cost by utilizing the great public school system here in Massachusetts. So we have great community colleges and public colleges and universities. One of each is usually within a driving distance to most towns and cities in the Commonwealth, so that they can commute, save money, living home with mom and dad, commuting for a year or two, rather than spending money on room and board. There's lots of ways to reduce that cost. And we always want to make sure that students are at least applying to a couple of public colleges so they have that lower, financial fit on the list. But mass transfer is a great program. Many of you may have heard of it. The website's right here. You'll get a copy of these slides where they can start a community college and then transfer all their credits. And if they have great grades, they may even get a tuition credit or a freeze on their tuition. So definitely, send students in that direction, especially if you're working with a student who really doesn't have financial resources and the family just is really strapped. Look at that public college option, even if it's for a year or two. There's also a lot of private colleges in the state that are working directly with community colleges in their city or local area so that students can transfer to a private college or university in the local area. So there's options there too. Now, you may have heard of New England Board of Higher Education, NEBI. They have a great program called Tuition Break, where if a student wants a major at a public college here in Massachusetts, but it's not offered, they may be able to get a tuition discount by going to a public college out of state in the local New England area that has their program. So that's another great way to help shave off and create a good financial fit. So feel free, I'm getting close to my final slides here if you have any other questions, and then we'll stop and do Q&A at the end. But we always are encouraging families and students to be friends with the financial aid office. They're there to help students and families. That's what they want to do. They're there to help them access as much money as they can afford based on the school's budgets. It may not always be what this family wants or needs, but they do their best, and they typically are putting their best offer up front, their best financial aid offer up front. The financial aid office can help families understand what their criteria is to renew their aid from the college. If they need to appeal, I mentioned we have a financial aid appeals webinar tonight at 6:30. So if you're interested in that, even if you can't watch it tonight, register for it and we'll send you the recording. It's going to be really great. Colleges are going to be on that webinar as well. But they can appeal. Now I'm saying appeal, not negotiate. So we get the question about negotiation. And I always tell families, don't use the word negotiation with colleges. Really try to approach them, even if you don't have something to appeal, no financial changes, to just let them know, my student really wants to go to your school, but we got more money at this other college that's about the same cost, and we're having trouble making the numbers work based on the aid you gave us. Is there anything else you can do or consider? That's a better way to approach it than saying you're going to negotiate a financial aid offer. And we've seen families get a couple extra thousand as, feel good money from the college, just to let them know that we really want your kid here, and, make them feel better about their offer and hopefully get them enrolled. Families can appeal their financial aid offer as well. They want to call the financial aid office or email them, get in touch to find out what their process is. What forms are they going to need to fill out to appeal their award based on a change in circumstance? So we've had tons of appeals the last 2 years for obvious reasons due to the pandemic, and colleges have their processes in place to help families, appeal, make any changes they can that could help the family in case of job loss, income changes, you know, uh, natural disasters. We have plenty of those up here in New England. So they can get in touch with the financial aid office. They can give them a call, email. They also are happy to set up Zoom appointments, especially if it's a school that is far away where you can't get there in person. They can set up Zoom. So after the family's gone through all of this, we want to remind them, get that deposit in by the school's deadline. Give MEFA a call. We have all of the options are right here on the screen. We're going to email this to you. We have blogs, we have emails, we have webinars. We have great articles that we send families through our email curriculum. We are on social media. So we have videos on our YouTube channel. We have every way that a family could want to reach out to us and get information and guidance. We're providing that for them. Our phone number is right here. We're open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And they can email us. They can also set up an appointment request for a one-on-one Zoom appointment. And I've done a few of these that just in the last month where they'll email me their financial aid offers. I'll put everything in the college cost calculator, and then I show them what we have online. And then we'll run the numbers on the payment calculator. So MEFA offers so many resources. Of course, everything is free of charge for families. Here is our social media platforms. Please follow us, like us, friend us, all that good stuff. And we also have our 800 number. If you have a question, you're helping a student and you need to ask us a question, call us or email us here, and we can help you help your students. So with that, I am going to end the formal presentation part and invite everybody to type in your questions, and we will go through those. I have a couple I can see in there right now. A few logistics reminders for those who logged in late. We are emailing this PowerPoint, link to this PowerPoint, as well as a recording of the webinar. And you can get 1 PDP point for this webinar because it was an hour. So I'm going to look at the questions now. And if you do have any, feel free to type those in. Okay. I'm actually going to just read this one right out loud because I think it's a good way to frame it. We have a counselor who is surprised that some colleges don't automatically put the full $5,500 federal direct student loan on a financial aid offer. Does that make sense to put no loans on an offer? And just asking if we can share schools that we know that don't put the full financial aid, the full loan in this offer. The schools that are not going to package the full $5,500 are typically, in my experience, going to be colleges that are giving out 100% of financial need or very good financial aid offers. They have big financial aid budgets. Most of their financial aid offer is going to be a lot of grants and scholarships. So they may not need a federal direct student loan at that school. But they could use it to help pay towards their family contribution, for example. So these students have had 100% of their financial need met, for most occasions. So these are the top tier schools, Ivy League schools, schools like that may say, we'll let the schools, their policy is if students need to borrow, we want them to come to us so that we can provide guidance and try and keep debt levels down. But trust me, they are definitely making up for it on the scholarship and grant side. But, students can always ask the financial aid office for that $5,500. More times than not, I see the full $5,500 on a financial aid offer. But it's really, the top tier schools with bigger budgets that are giving huge financial aid packages that might not package the full amount because they've met the student's need with scholarships and grants. But even if a student's need has been met, they can still use this loan to help pay for towards the family contribution. Okay, so question here, loan repayment in certain occupations seems to require documentation and forgiveness has been slow coming. Any reforms in this area? I think you're talking about public service loan forgiveness. And I'm going to refer you to an awesome webinar we have coming up with Betsy Maya of TISLA, who is an expert in public service loan forgiveness. So she is going to do a webinar, I believe it's in May. You can go on MEFA.org, look at events. It should be right on there about how to pay the college bill. And we will also be inviting school counselors to this webinar. So we're going to be inviting everybody to join us because she is an expert in this field. So public service loan forgiveness, just to keep it short, it has been opened up a lot for this year up until October 31st of 2022. So there's a lot more opportunities for public service loan forgiveness. So I'm going to invite you to visit MEFA.org. Make sure you're signed up for our school counselor webinars, school counselor emails, I apologize, and you'll get invitations to this. But it is on our website if you want to sign up for that webinar. Even if you register and don't attend, you'll get the recording and you can listen in. And we do have information on MEFA.org about public service loan forgiveness. So definitely check that out. Okay, so question about where can we access the aid award comparison tool that you used? I'm actually going to just show you live. I'm going to go to MEFA.org if I can close down my browser here. Go here. I'm just going to start at MEFA.org. And you can go to, if you go to MEFA loans, we have all of our loan information here, but if you go to pay for college, that college cost calculator I showed you is right here. And that student loan payment calculator I showed you is right here. You can also use the search bar here if you need to. Now, since I was just plugging a couple webinars, I want to show you where you can find those as well. So events coming up. So I mentioned a few that we have coming up. So that one on appeals is right here. You don't even have to click into a topic to find that one. We have some more webinars on how to pay the college bill with students and families. And then if I keep scrolling down here on Wednesday, April 27th, here is the webinar that, we may be talking about federal student loan repayment, and then we'll also do one on public service loan forgiveness. So we'll show you that as well. So we have some great webinars coming up. How to pay the college bill, if you look right here. All of our webinars are right here, so you can find those there. So here's that public service loan forgiveness webinar I was telling you about with Betsy Maya. It's on May 19th at 6:30. So definitely sign up for that, because as a school counselor who's working at a public school, you may qualify for public service loan forgiveness for your own student loans. So even just for yourself, you definitely want to listen on this webinar. There's been a lot of changes to the program this year because of the pandemic. So take advantage of it if you qualify, but you can learn more at that webinar too. All right, so I am going to end the webinar. I don't have any other questions in here. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We are, really happy to have you join the webinar. We'll get you a link to the recording, and just know that you can get a PDP point for this webinar. So definitely take advantage of those professional development points. If you collect 10, then you can cash those in for your PDPs. So definitely, take advantage of that. It's an opportunity for school counselors to utilize the PDPs. So with that, I'm going to end the webinar for everybody, but I want to thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day, and call us, email us if you need anything to help your students. Have a great day. Thank you, everybody.